A perfect union, right? Well, that's exactly what I had. At least that's how I imagined it. And in truth it was. Hilly, my beloved wife, and I strengthened our relationship almost 2 decades ago. In a few weeks, on the 10th of December, we would have celebrated our 20th anniversary. Looking back, I can honestly say that there wasn't much I could have done to improve our life together. Of course, we had occasional disagreements, but the subsequent reconciliation was always incredibly sincere. We were what we were. Our marriage went through only one particularly dark phase, which occurred in the 2nd year of our life together. When we got married, we were both very young. I was 20, and Hilly was only 18. We were childhood sweethearts and grew up in close proximity to each other. Interestingly, my older brother Bob married Hilly's sister Pam the previous year, so it was a natural development for us. But our problem was that Bob and Pam had their first child in the 1st year of marriage, and we seemed to have difficulty conceiving. As a result, we decided to undergo an examination to find out what was the matter. Despite the doctor's assurances that we were overly worried and should let things develop naturally, in fact, it was all about Hilly's parents, especially her mother, who persistently urged us to start a family. This was a common feature of their family, considering that Hilly, in addition to Pam, had 3 other sisters. Jen, my mother-in-law, longed for a son in the family, given her own inability to produce one, and unfortunately Bob and Pam's first child turned out to be another girl. The pressure was building. Interestingly, the test results turned out to be very inconclusive. Hilly was fine, but my sperm count was slightly below average, or so they said. I still don't understand the details. The doctors reassured us that it wasn't that important and everything was fine. They advised us to be patient and assured us that our first child would appear when he was ready. Although we tried to be patient, it still affected our marriage. Fortunately, we didn't have to wait too long. As it turned out, in the 3rd year of our marriage, Hilly gave birth to a child, as the doctor assured us. Although she was a beautiful and precious child, she was just another girl. But her appearance removed our concerns about the ability to conceive. From that moment on, our marriage gained stability and became an ideal partnership. Undoubtedly, this was due to our newfound sense of lightness. Soon, Hilly became pregnant again, and finally a boy, Tom, was born. The whole family rejoiced with overflowing happiness. It is important to note that girls have never been neglected or loved less. The eldest son in our family knew how to make everything unusual, although, to tell the truth, I started it all. I couldn't help but brag about it in front of my older brother, but he just smiled at me in response, and I advised him to be patient. And he waited. As he said, their first son was born the following year, and 8 months later we became the happy owners of another addition to our family. We named him Mike. It was like a whole fleet of buses, wasn't it? After waiting for what seemed like an eternity, a whole bunch of them arrived at once. I think it was appropriate considering that we had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. We all accepted the idea of living as one harmonious family, and even when Hilly's other sisters tied the knot, they easily joined our close-knit team. The presence of an extended family brought great joy to the children, and we never had to worry about finding a babysitter when we needed one. As far as I understood, other couples were also satisfied, enjoying the beauty of a simple married life surrounded by a loving family. But we had to face some difficulties along the way. For example, when Bob had an accident at work, I found myself, figuratively speaking, tied to his side while my blood slowly poured into his body. He survived the incident, and I, of course, was unharmed. We often made fun of each other in a joking, brotherly manner, declaring ourselves real blood brothers. As our 20th anniversary approached, we thought about how to celebrate this event. Bob and Pam had already celebrated their anniversary the previous year, and this joyful meeting made a lasting impression on everyone. Inspired by their experience, we decided to follow their example and booked a private room in a nearby hotel to arrange a grand welcome for our loved ones. By that time, our daughter Linda had turned into an amazing 17-year-old girl, similar to her mother, but with a youthful charm that surpassed even her beauty. She had gorgeous dark brown hair that fell gracefully over her shoulders, and her huge green eyes were mesmerizing when they met yours. In terms of appearance, we also had common features. Both were slender, with attractive legs, and other features that perhaps fathers should not focus too much on. Predictably, she had a string of boyfriends, and it seemed like one of them was constantly appearing and disappearing in our house. But she had a poise that allowed us to just go with the flow. On the other hand, Tom, as it always seemed to me, was more like me. He had a more robust physique, which suited him very well. At his age, he shared the same passion for rugby that Bob and I shared. Surprisingly, despite the fact that he was only 16 years old, he had already established himself as a regular player in the first team of his school. As for the youngest, Mike, he seems to have encountered some difficulties. Unlike his brother Tom, who excelled in sports, or his sister Linda, who was very popular, poor Mike was not having the best year. But there was nothing serious about it. In fact, he showed remarkable intelligence, perhaps even surpassing the other two siblings, and was an excellent student. He just behaved the way any normal person should have behaved. It was very difficult to understand, as if a teenager was speaking. I should have been more sympathetic that day. Maybe I should have ignored the mess he left on the dining room table. Maybe I should have just cleaned up after myself. But did I do that? No. I told him firmly, "You're not coming out until you clean up this mess, Mike." He answered sullenly, "I'll do it later." I insisted, "You're going to do it now, Mike." He lost his temper and screamed, "Why are you always picking on me?" I answered sharply, "I'm not quibbling. You are a member of our family and you will follow our rules like everyone else," I said firmly. Mike's frustration was building, and he was on the verge of tears. I took a deep breath, feeling my own anger building. "I'll make you," I replied. "I am your father and you will do what I say." His answer took me by surprise. "Are you really my father?" he shouted back. I stopped abruptly as his words shocked me. My next answer stuck in my throat as I considered his words. Mike quickly intervened, his face filled with misery. "I'm sorry, Dad," he interjected, his expression filled with remorse. "I didn't want to say that. I will clarify the situation immediately." Having said that, he took his eyes off me and began hurriedly rummaging through the things scattered on the table, collecting the books and other things left behind. After a few minutes, everything was put in order, and he quickly left the room without saying a word. As a result, I was left alone, immersed in my thoughts and reflecting that my world was on the verge of collapse. The problem, of course, was Mike, who always stood out among his siblings. He was more diligent, more serious, but less sociable compared to his older siblings. I often thought about the reasons for his discrepancy and even discussed this issue with Hilly, but she just shrugged her shoulders and dismissed my concerns, suggesting that I had made up the whole incident. Was I really delusional? What could have prompted Mike to say such words? If he had just shouted them out in a fit of anger and left, I would have been angry at him, but that would have been the end of it. But he quickly apologized and retracted his comment. Why? What did he understand that escaped me? Oh no. I desperately wanted not to think about the disturbing thoughts that were plaguing my restless mind at that very moment. At first, I was seized with an irresistible desire to hastily find Hilly and demand answers to questions about her recent activities. But I paused to consider the futility of such an impulsive act. What words will I choose to present to her? Accusing her of infidelity behind my back seemed unjustified. If she had really been involved in such actions, she would undoubtedly have denied it. On the other hand, if she were innocent, how could she forgive me for doubting her loyalty? In addition, this alleged incident occurred more than 16 years ago. But does the past tense exempt you from possible misconduct? My stomach rumbled. A queasy feeling gripped me, and I still didn't understand what the truth was, or if I had any reason to worry. What a terrible day it's been. The topic of blood groups occupied all my thoughts, forcing me to hastily search our office for our children's medical records. Linda, Tom, and Mike, Each of them, like me, had type O positive blood, which I found out when I donated blood for my brother. At first I was overcome with a sense of relief, but then I realized that blood types alone do not reveal the whole picture. If Mike had a different blood type, that would be one thing, but the fact that they had the same blood type could just be a coincidence. I was shocked when my son, Mike, made a careless remark in anger, making me doubt that he was really my own flesh and blood. It was a disturbing thought that made me think about such an extreme measure as DNA analysis. But I quickly realized that I had overreacted, allowing one remark to overshadow our strong bond. Still, my anxiety was renewed when Mike couldn't bring himself to meet my gaze during dinner that night. It only intensified when he abruptly left the table without saying a word to anyone. Hilly, noticing his strange behavior, asked what was wrong with Mike. I couldn't answer because I didn't know myself. I shrugged, feeling puzzled. I asked, but they both shook their heads, seemingly oblivious to anything unusual. I pressed them even more, asking if anything was bothering them, but they kept shaking their heads. After waiting until the young people left the table, I plucked up the courage and turned to my wife. Mike seemed so different from the other two, I began cautiously. Hilly, do you have any thoughts on this? My wife, getting up to clear the dishes, replied dismissively, "Oh, let's not talk about it anymore, Davy, he's not that different." As the conversation came to an end, I couldn't help but wonder if she was deliberately ignoring the topic or if she really wasn't showing concern. The concept of DNA intrigued me, prompting me to delve deeper into the search for answers. 20 minutes passed, and I was immersed in an internet search. An hour passed, and my mind was filled with an abundance of facts and figures, but my understanding remained unsatisfactory. It wasn't until Monday morning that I came across the name of a laboratory specializing in DNA analysis. The difficult process of finding her took almost an hour of my time, and my secretary could undoubtedly have completed this task much faster. What excuse could I use to explain to my secretary the need for a DNA test? That's why I decided to do it myself. Of course, there were professionals who would not hesitate to cope with this task, but I had to pay a lot of money for their services, especially if I needed quick results. But I couldn't afford to risk my marriage without knowing the truth. Was Mike really my son? The experts advised me to provide samples of all three of my children, as well as one of my own, for comparison. But I'll tell you, extracting one strand of hair from adult children is not an easy task. Despite the fact that Mike continued to avoid me, I persevered and managed to send the necessary materials. Now I could only anxiously wait to see if Mike was really my son. As the days passed, Mike seemed to calm down, perhaps relieved that I didn't have to sort things out with him because of his outburst. We were almost at the point where I wanted to discuss this issue with him, but I decided it was better to wait until I got the results. Throughout this ordeal, my wife remained as loving as ever and provided me with unwavering support. There were no noticeable changes in our daily routine, and there was no previous enthusiasm in our intimate meetings. But I didn't give up on them. My doubts persisted, and despite the fact that I tried to hide them from Hilly, I couldn't help but wonder if she had had anyone else during our 20-year marriage. One day we had dinner with my brother and his wife, and when I was alone with him, I almost betrayed my fears. We were strikingly similar in almost every way. If someone else turned out to be Mike's father, then it logically meant that it couldn't be him. God, why did I even have such thoughts? Have I become so distrustful? But something held me back. I didn't need to burden him with my doubts, and deep down I knew that he would support me if the test results turned out to be unfavorable. I pulled myself together. I was silent. I was silent for so long that Hilly asked me a couple of times if I was okay. I calmed her down by saying, "I'm fine, I just have a few things on my mind." She looked worried for a moment. I didn't feel any further pressure from them, but I decided to deliver the results to my office in case Hilly got to them before me and opened the letter. With trembling hands, I read the results, desperately trying to make sense of them. Could this piece of paper be the end of my marriage? After reading it, It turned out that Mike's results matched mine, which brought some relief, although I still couldn't fully comprehend all this. You've probably already realized that medical jargon is like a foreign language to me. In fact, the entire report indicated a positive coincidence. After all the fuss, it turned out that the problem was minor. What a relief. I felt a wave of gratitude when I realized that I hadn't shared my concerns with Hilly. I mentally promised myself to make amends to her later, perhaps by treating her to a good dinner. Looking at the cover letter, which I hadn't noticed before, I noticed that the lab was asking me to call to discuss the results. It seemed like they were just looking for a way to make extra money from me, and I wondered if it was worth spending time on it. "This is Davy Jones speaking," I announced as I dialed the number. Dr. Hoskins asked me to call him. After giving the woman on the other end of the line some necessary information, she connected me with a respected doctor. "Hello, Mr. Jones," he greeted me warmly. "Did you have the opportunity to get acquainted with the results that we sent you?" I answered confidently. "Yes, of course. If I understood correctly, it seems that my concerns about my son Mike were unfounded." But the doctor intervened, warning me, "Yes, to some extent it is true, but everything is not as clear as it seems." As I stood there, the earth seemed to disappear from under my feet. I was anticipating the moment when he would destroy my whole world. "So he's not my son?" I muttered in disbelief. Mr. Jones said reassuringly, "No, that's not true. The probability that he is not your biological child is extremely low, less than 1,000,000 to 1. I am ready to put my entire reputation on the line to confirm that he is indeed your own son." A wave of relief washed over me, and I replied, "So Mike is my real son?" Mr. Jones sighed. "Yes, that's right, Mr. Jones." The embarrassment had not yet passed when I hesitantly continued, "Then what's the problem? What else could be wrong?" By this point, anxiety had completely consumed me. I have come across information that DNA analysis can reveal genetic diseases and similar conditions. It made me wonder if Michael, or maybe one of us, had something terrible going on. What was he going to reveal? The doctor told me the news in a serious tone, mentioning the other 2 samples that I had provided. "The ones from your son's brother and sister?" he asked anxiously. "Yes, but what about them?" My panic began to build. "Is there something wrong with one of them?" The doctor informed me that they were half-siblings of my youngest son. "Step-brothers and sisters," I said, confused. "What does this mean, doctor?" "What is a stepbrother or a sister?" I asked. "This means, Mr. Jones, that it is extremely unlikely that you are their biological father." The phone slipped out of my hand, and the next moment I came to my senses when I was surrounded by colleagues. "Give him some space," someone shouted while I was trying to catch my breath. "Are you okay, Davy?" another voice asked, and I nodded, trying to regain my composure. They helped me, and soon I was back in my seat, listening to mutterings about the sultry heat in the office. It was funny that they thought they understood how stressed we all were because of our workload. If only they knew. They agreed that someone would give me a ride home, and advised me to take the day off. I felt grateful when I arrived at the empty house where Hilly worked part-time and the children were at school. It was something I had to do, even though I was afraid of it, but I couldn't avoid it anymore. With trembling fingers, I dialed the lab number again. A few moments later, I was talking to the doctor, apologizing for interrupting the conversation so suddenly. "I apologize, Mr. Jones," he expressed regret. "I should have warned you in advance, but the Postal Service often faces difficulties." I assured him of my understanding and assured him that I was fine, which prompted him to review the test results again. Undoubtedly, it has been confirmed that Mike is my child. But the results showed that Linda and Tom are very likely to be my children. "Doctor," I asked, "is there any chance of a mistake?" He carefully explained that if we had taken another sample, the situation could have been clarified. It is quite possible that we would have requested another sample for verification, but the presence of 2 samples makes this almost certain. These two samples belong to siblings, which means that you are unlikely to be their father. But I clung to the slightest glimmer of hope when you mentioned their closeness. Could it be that you have a twin, Mr. Jones? He asked cautiously. Or maybe a brother. My brother! I exclaimed excitedly. What's he got to do with it? He asked. You have to draw your own conclusions, Mr. Jones. The doctor's voice wouldn't stop, but I had already lost interest in him. My once idyllic world has collapsed, leaving me facing a difficult decision. Should I end the marriage? Should I end a lifelong relationship with my only brother? You can change your spouse, but change your brother or sister? Not a chance. Perhaps it would be easier to pretend that I don't know anything and continue to eke out a miserable existence. But I couldn't stand it. Besides, what about Mike? He undoubtedly knew about something significant. But it seems he misunderstood the situation. From now on, my attitude towards my son Mike will undoubtedly change. But will my love for Linda and Tom decrease? I couldn't imagine that this would happen. And how is this possible? Regardless of whether my biological material created them or not, they were still my children, and no documents could change this fact. The main question was, what to do with Hilly? How will she react? What about my unpleasant brother and his wife Pam? How will they take this news? This news made me wonder how the rest of the family would react. My mind was filled with countless unanswered questions, and I felt depressed and insecure. The situation seemed incredibly difficult, and I didn't feel ready for it. I vaguely remember leaving the house and starting to walk down the street, but the memories quickly faded away. The next thing I remember is that I woke up in a hospital bed, and my hands were wrapped in bandages. It turned out that I stumbled drunkenly in front of the car, but at that moment I was completely unaware of it. Someone called, "Davy, are you okay?" I tried to look around the room to identify the source of the voice, but the pain was excruciating. She was unbearable. As the realization dawned on me, I realized that actually she was none other than my ex-wife. Well, technically she was still my wife. I was confused, not knowing how to react. Should I have greeted her with a casual "hello, darling," and informed her that our two children were not biologically mine, and at the same time revealed her affair with my own brother? It was somehow not quite right. As a result, it turned out that my injuries were not as serious as initially thought, and the next day I was discharged and sent home. I found myself in a situation where I couldn't help myself, so I waited patiently for Hilly to help me. It gave me the opportunity to reflect and develop a strategy. But as it turned out, it was a waste of time, because I still didn't know what to do. After all, Mike and the other two children seemed to be the main concern in this situation. Whatever decision I made, their well-being had to be a priority, even if it meant sacrificing my own. From now on, Hilly's interests won't matter much. The only thing I was sure of was that our 20th wedding anniversary was approaching, and the order for the grand dinner had already been made. I needed to resolve all the issues before that day. After about a week, I almost completely came to my senses, and everything seemed to be back to normal. But Mike was an exception. He seemed to be on the verge of losing control of himself, which was not surprising considering his age. "You should talk to him, Davy," Hilly suggested one evening. "I do not know what is happening to him. He doesn't seem to want to talk to me anymore." "I'll talk to him," I assured her. "Do you have any idea what's bothering him?" "What is it?" she asked. "I have a few thoughts," I replied curtly. "Davy, do you want to discuss something with me?" I replied without showing much interest. Surprisingly, the opportunity presented itself the next day when I found him alone in his room. He had no choice but to face me, because he couldn't just push me away. "Do you want to talk about what's bothering you, son?" I began softly. He just shook his head, not wanting to open up. "Maybe it has to do with that day, Mike? Maybe with our relationship?" I pushed him. Mike looked up at me, and I couldn't help but notice that there was a tear in his eyes. At that moment he seemed older than his young years. "Do "Do you know Dad?" he asked me. I replied, trying to keep a smile on my face. "Maybe I know more than you think, son." He was whimpering. "Then why aren't you doing anything about it, Dad? Why are you letting them get away with everything?" I paused, realizing that the conversation was not going the way I would like. We seemed to be discussing completely different issues. Confused, I asked, "What's getting away with, son?" I couldn't think of any other answer. He repeated, "You really don't know, do you, Dad?" I had to admit, "Apparently not, son. This is Mom and Uncle Tim, Dad." He whispered to me, barely audible. "This shameful phenomenon happens once a month or so while you're at work. Uncle Tim, damn him." Tim was the husband of one of Hilly's sisters. I could only mumble pathetically in response, unable to find other words. "They've been doing this for years, Dad." My child informed me that Linda considers him Tim's child, not yours. With that, he broke down and burst into tears, seeking comfort in my arms. It's been a long time since I last experienced this, and I was shocked by how much my baby had grown and how strong he felt. I calmed him down by hugging him tightly. "Mike, I can assure you without a doubt that you are my son, not Tim's. Trust me, I know." He began to cry softly, asking, "But Dad, how can you be so sure?" With confidence, I replied, "Son, I'm absolutely sure. Trust me, I'm sure." We spent some time in conversation, carefully revealing only bits of information, until I managed to convince him of my true identity. But no one mentioned that my brother is the father of 2 other children. To my surprise, I realized that my seemingly ideal family is not as happy and contented as I thought. Although Linda and Tom knew about their mother's affair with their uncle, they preferred to ignore it, not knowing what to do. It was a terrible burden to impose on his own children. But there was also Tim. He was the husband of the youngest of the 4 sisters, married to the cross, and undoubtedly the most beautiful of them. Another blow pierced the core of what I thought was my perfect union with Hilly. A few days later, I found the strength to gather all 3 of our children for lunch, preparing for the most difficult task that has ever faced me. I told them everything I had learned, leaving not a single stone unturned. Not knowing how they would react, I braced myself for the consequences. Surprisingly, they took the news relatively calmly, given the circumstances. Linda shed a few tears, and Tom sat with his head in his hands. Each of them expressed a desire to meet with their mother immediately, but I convinced them to temporarily hold off because I had to resolve some issues in advance. They all confessed their love and devotion to me, vowing to break up with Hilly forever. But I managed to dissuade them from such a radical decision, reminding them that despite her actions, she had been a devoted mother to them all her life. I spoke of her with feigned admiration, although it followed from the children's story that Hilly, my beloved wife, was involved in a dubious affair with her brother-in-law Tim. Although this relationship probably didn't last long enough to make him Mike's biological father. Perhaps the claim that this happens once a month was greatly exaggerated, although, to tell the truth, none of us were sure about it. But what I was sure of was that the children were immensely grateful that they had finally let out all their pent-up emotions. That evening we got together, and to my surprise, all 3 of us, including Tom, were shedding tears. I'll correct you, all 4 of us were crying. The desire for revenge consumed me, but I longed to find a way that would not bring grief to my beloved children. And let me emphasize that when I say my children, I say it intentionally. I thought long and hard, looking for a solution. I tried my best to develop an unusual plan of revenge, but in the end, I realized that a direct confrontation would be enough. Fortunately, in the near future, I had an event where I could implement this plan, on December 10th. As is often the case in families, we all gathered together, even though my parents had already passed away. Bob and I were among the last to have children. That evening, 39 people sat down for a festive dinner, mostly representatives of the Hilly part of the family and their family, as well as a handful of our mutual friends. Fortunately, the meal turned out to be very pleasant, That's what they said, but personally I could absorb cardboard and wash it down with water. It's time for speeches. And so they began. Was that the end? Or maybe it's just the beginning. Sweat trickled down my forehead, and I took slow, deep breaths to calm my nerves. The task ahead was far from simple, but it was necessary. Addressing our loved ones, I plucked up the courage and started with a few banal anecdotes. And so we are gathered here to celebrate 2 decades of marital happiness with my beloved wife Hilly. I have finally achieved what I have been striving for so long. I have many fascinating and deeply personal aspects of my marriage to my beloved wife that I would like to share with all of you. When I started talking about it, there was a light laugh at the big table, accompanied by a few teasing remarks about our supposed intimate life. Hilly blushed, feeling slightly embarrassed. Few people knew that they were far from the truth. When the laughter died down, Linda was the first to leave the dining room, followed by Tom, and then Mike. They left without saying a word, leaving the entire table to watch their retreating figures in awe. Hilly stood up, feeling uncomfortable. "Come back here, all 3 of you!" she exclaimed, anger clearly evident in her voice. She scolded her children for being disrespectful to their father. Tom was the only one who recognized his mother. He gave her a brief glance and expressed his displeasure by shaking his head, after which he joined his siblings on the street. Davy called out to me, urging me to act. "Do something. Tell them to come back immediately," he pleaded. I calmed him down by saying, "It's all right." I firmly told Hilly that they already know what I'm going to say. Since it's about the 3 of them, they'll understand. "Perhaps it would be better if they weren't here." Hilly was stunned, her mouth hanging open in disbelief. At first, she was surprised by my reaction to her demand, but then she became concerned, as she was probably considering various reasons for my behavior. "Please have a seat, Hilly," I ordered, leaving no room for negotiation. Continuing to inspect the people around me, I continued my performance. I enjoyed 20 incredible years of marriage, which I considered an impeccable union, until a few weeks ago. I paused, emphasizing the weight of my words. The energy in the room was charged, creating a palpable tension. Some of the faces showed confusion, while others kept smiling, looking forward to the denouement. But there were also a few people whose expressions betrayed deep concern, which took me by surprise. I hesitated for a moment, and when the silence dragged on, I plucked up the courage and revealed the shocking truth. This revelation shocked me to the core. Linda, my beloved daughter, was not biologically mine. This realization proved too much for Hilly, and she covered her face with trembling hands and burst into sobs. Breaking the silence, I turned to Hilly, urging her to reveal the identity of Linda's real father. But to my horror, she remained silent, refusing to reveal the truth. Apart from her loud sobs, I was surrounded by absolute silence. Not calming down, I continued, inviting everyone to reveal the identity of Linda's father. In addition, I dared to name a man who, without my knowledge, had an affair with my wife. There was silence in the room, and I remained motionless, glaring at the assembled relatives and friends. Despite the unpleasantness of the situation, I felt a special satisfaction in mocking those who had deceived me. They didn't know the extent of my discoveries yet. I couldn't resist giving Brother Bob a stern look, and he immediately seemed to shrink under my gaze, realizing that his secret was no longer safe. "So, no one wants to confess?" I asked, addressing everyone present. "Do I have to reveal the truth myself?" To my surprise, Bob's wife, Pam, suddenly stood up, silencing everyone. "It's not what you think, Davy," she screamed, her voice full of anguish. "There was no scandalous affair or anything like that. They just had sex a few times to get Hilly pregnant. The whole family was in desperate need of a boy, especially Mom. As I noticed, it turned out that you don't have the ability to father a child." Fortunately, no one, figuratively speaking, hit me with a pen. Otherwise, I would undoubtedly have been taken aback. It was obvious that she knew. Pam was well aware that her husband, my brother, was the father of my daughter. I looked around the table and noticed that it had split into two groups. Among them were friends who were oblivious to the situation, while most family members seemed to be aware. As I stood there trying to collect my thoughts, one by one my friends got up. Embarrassed, the group apologized and hurriedly left, leaving behind only 17 or 18 people who were all members of the same family. "Why don't you go play over there?" Julie, another of Hilly's sisters, suggested, gradually sending the younger children away to keep them occupied. Teenagers were also encouraged to find something to do, but their attachment to the gathering seemed unbreakable, as if it combined the excitement of the East Indies, the drama of Coronation Street, and neighborhood friendship. And rightfully, no one could blame them for not wanting to leave. Everyone present was well aware of this chaotic situation, with the possible exception of the children. Several husbands looked confused, but no one denied it. "Look, Davy," my brother began to explain. "Everything is not what it seems, I assure you." He tried to continue some stupid phrase, but my gaze, full of pure hatred, instantly silenced him. Turning to everyone at the table, I asked them, "So you all knew that Bob had an intimate relationship with my beloved wife and the mother of my children, Linda?" No one has directly admitted this, but no one has denied it. "It was only 3 times, Bob interjected nervously, trying to defend Pam once more. I angrily exclaimed, "Whose ridiculous idea was that? Just to get her pregnant?" My temperament began to rise as I directed my words at the group. No one spoke, but many looked at Jen, my mother-in-law. I should have known it was her doing. "Thank you very much, Mom," I said solemnly. "Your desire to have a male heir in the family has ruined my marriage." Hilly finally spoke, calling out, "Please don't say that, David. You can't say that. I can't imagine my life without you." "Can you forgive me for one mistake?" she pleaded. "Just one mistake?" I asked again, wanting clarification. "Of course, honey," Hilly sobbed, looking at me with watery eyes. "It was just one time. It may seem terrible now, but when Mom organized everything all those years ago, it seemed logical." "But what about Tom?" I asked, concern in my voice. "Well, of course he's yours, Davy," she croaked, her voice full of uncertainty. "What do you mean?" "This is not true," I informed her. My words were firm and decisive. "I did a DNA test, and his father is the same person as Linda." The atmosphere at the table instantly changed, and a heavy tension descended on all of us. Pam's voice filled the room with surprise as she exclaimed, "What are you saying, Davy?" I replied calmly, "You heard me, Pam. If my brother is Linda's father, then he is also Tom's father." There was a heavy silence at the table when this new information reached most of them. Pam, spurred on by the realization, directed her anger at her husband, Bob. "You're a bastard, Bob," she growled. You promised me, and you came back to her anyway." Bob, feeling remorse, lowered his head, wishing he were somewhere else. Pam's rage continued, and she directed her rage at Hilly. "And you lying woman!" she screamed. "I reluctantly agreed to let you spend a week with my husband, knowing full well that you would continue to have intimate relations with him." In a fit of anger, she went up to her sister and slapped her hard in the face. She hit Hilly several times, calling her derogatory names, and only stopped when someone intervened and separated them, causing her to burst into tears. I quipped, "Are you happy now, happy Mom?" But she just looked at me with a blank expression on her face. I couldn't help but wonder who else had entered into an affair with my wife without my knowledge. I bumped into them when everyone else was silent, and met the gaze of Tim, who was sitting across the table from me. "You're a despicable person," exclaimed Julie, echoing my words. This accusation took me by surprise too. "Is it true what they said that night? Did you really sleep with her at the party, you despicable person?" I was overcome with confusion. Julie was angrily shouting at her husband, Tim, who looked guilty and didn't deny anything. And then she turned to my wife, loudly accusing her, Have you, my dear sister, slept with all your brothers-in-law, you shameful wench? Well, she definitely made Tim look like a fool, I said, enjoying the sight. Me? What did I do? I protested. Tim's attempts to deceive her were weak, and that evening he turned out to be surprisingly clumsy, unable to escape the wrath of his wife, who gave him a ringing slap right on the nose. Don't you dare set foot in our house today, she shouted at her husband. Her anger was palpable. And anyway, never come back. I'm divorcing you too, and I never want to see you again, Pam hissed at Babu, her words dripping with contempt. Brother Bob came up to me, walking around the table with his arms outstretched and an expression of deep shame on his face. Davy, he managed to clear his throat. Davy, what can I say? Annoyed by his presence, I replied, Nothing, despicable man. Not having enough strength, I impulsively swung at him, hitting him on the chin. Although the blow was not too strong, the timing was impeccable, and he stumbled backwards, tripped over a nearby chair, and fell to the floor, showing no desire to get up. It was at this point that the atmosphere changed, and it can be argued that the party ended abruptly. The whole evening was devoid of joy. Hilly did not return home that evening and in fact never appeared again except to pack some things. The children stubbornly refused to talk to her for a while, although I held a deep grudge against her. But I had to give preference to the long-term well-being of our children. Eventually they relented and allowed her to return to their lives, but things were never the same again. I became a single parent, and she became more like a distant acquaintance. The unity of our family has collapsed. That evening, 2 of the 3 sisters left the marriage, and only Pam stayed with Bob. But Pam gave him a lot of trouble, believing in the principle of reciprocity. A few nights later, Pam visited me when the children were not at home, and her intentions quickly became clear. Whether it was revenge or a way to even the score, I never found out. But I definitely felt the consequences for myself. There was no love or tenderness. We just engaged in intense physical intimacy for several hours. The sensations were unusual, an experience similar to intimacy with my wife, although it was completely different. After that, she expressed her gratitude and left, leaving me unaware that over time she had developed the habit of making similar contacts with Bob's acquaintances. After all, she had relationships with almost all of them. The fate of their marriage remained uncertain, and to be honest, I had no desire to worry about it. But it must have been incredibly hard for my unfortunate brother. As fate would have it, 3 weeks later, one of her other sisters, who turned out to be the most attractive, contacted me and invited me to dinner. Intrigued, I agreed. We enjoyed a meal together, talked, and even romanticized a little. I found myself in bed again, but this time it felt unique. After the first outburst of passion, we connected on a deeper level, and it reminded me of the first days with Hilly. I couldn't understand why Tim had walked away from his marriage, but it was clear that his desire for intimacy wasn't the problem. In an unexpected turn of events, Jen's husband, Alf, who had endured her interference for years, finally reached his limit. He took the bold step of buying a 40-foot yacht and spent the rest of his bright years sailing around Europe. This decision turned out to be very beneficial for me. From time to time, the children went on sea trips with him, which lasted a week or 2. During these adventures, we got to know various places such as the south of France, La Rochelle, and the Canary Islands. Linda, who met a young Spaniard while sailing, eventually tied the knot with him. By coincidence, his family turned out to be the owner of one of the largest yacht marinas in Europe, which turned out to be very useful. As for the 2 boys, they seem to have adopted their father's experience and are in no hurry to settle down. They understand how important it is to take your time. As for me, I haven't seen Hilly for a long time, but the children have informed me that she lives a lonely life. None of her family, like her father, wants to keep in touch with her. As the children told me, Hilly suffers a lot without me. But this does not concern me. She has led a lying and lustful life all these years, betraying not only me, but also his own sisters. I hope she will suffer for the rest of her life, and no man will want to be with such a lying woman. The children tell me that she often asks about me, and I just reply with a grunt. Besides, I'm thinking about forming a harmonious partnership again, but this time with her sister. I believe we have feelings for each other, but we're both being careful. Only time will tell. I want to make sure that I'm getting married not out of resentment towards Hilly, but solely out of feelings. When a simple grin changed everything. I could have accepted it and continued to live without her, but that smirk pushed me over the edge. Their blatant disrespect cut deep into my soul, even if she didn't notice it. It became clear that Samantha, my wife of 6 years, would soon stop being around me. Our marriage has had its share of problems, partly due to the fact that I have been selflessly devoted to work for the last 6 months. But all these sacrifices were made for the sake of a promising promotion that awaited me and promised a significant increase in salary. This allowed Sam to quit her job and us to start a family. However, there is another problem with Samantha. She is an incredibly attractive woman, one of those who easily attract attention without wanting to. Despite the fact that she does not respond to courtship, her warm smile often gives the wrong impression. She bears a striking resemblance to Scarlett Johansson. She has the same stunning facial features and the same attractive figure, only taller. It's not surprising that men naturally feel attracted to her. I've had my suspicions for a long time given her excessive delays at work and frequent trips out of town. The constant smirk on her face during their company's holiday party was the indisputable proof I needed. I had practically begged Sam to invite me to this event, and now I understood why. Respect is very important in my family, and this case has only strengthened me in this opinion. Let me briefly tell you about myself. My name is John Simon Selly, and in high school I held the prestigious position of shortstop for our varsity team. During one of the games at the beginning of the season, we were confronted by the team that was most likely to deprive us of our chances of winning the conference championship. It was at this crucial moment that the opposing pitcher deliberately sent a fastball straight at my head. I barely dodged the ball, which missed my face, but unfortunately collided with my helmet. Gathering my resolve, I quickly got to my feet and started running towards first base. When I looked at the pitcher, I noticed that a grin appeared on his face. In a quiet manner, he uttered an insulting word to me, provoking my anger. Without thinking, I furiously rushed to the pitcher, catching him off guard. This encounter was very different from a typical baseball showdown. Instead of exchanging weak punches, I landed a powerful punch right in his nose. The blow was strong enough to break him, causing blood to gush out and stain his flawless white uniform. After such an unexpected turn of events, chaos ensued. As a result, I was suspended from work pending a hearing that was supposed to determine whether a permanent ban would be imposed on me. My coach expressed his disappointment to me, but my father supported my actions when he escorted me home. I witnessed the disgusting behavior and words of this man towards you. We cannot allow such people to disrespect us. It's a slippery slope once they realize they have power over us. Despite this, the disapproval from my coach really hurt me. He has been my mentor for the last 3 years, and his admiration was important to me. The next day I visited his office in search of advice, and his lecture made an indelible impression on me, which has remained to this day. Why should you care about the opinion of such a disgusting person? You know the environment I grew up in. I lived in the area of State and 75th Street, where I was constantly faced with the presence of a gang member who constantly tried to provoke me. Fortunately, my parents, who did not tolerate violence, did not let me stray from the right path. Under their influence, I received higher education and eventually left a poor neighborhood. Now I have the freedom to live wherever I want, and I'm lucky to have a job that I'm passionate about. And those stupid gang members either died or were trapped in addiction. I'll tell you what, if you get the chance to play with me again, there won't be a fight, regardless of the circumstances. Unfortunately, my actions resulted in a 3-game suspension. Someone must have been watching me because Ron Mueller, the opposing team's catcher, suddenly appeared during the hearing. It became obvious that he was outraged by his coach's unethical tactics aimed at achieving victory. Their coach ordered the pitcher to intentionally throw a risky ball, hoping that I would be permanently suspended from the game. Ron, of course, refused to win by such methods and intervened to save me. As fate would have it, Ron later became a catcher on my college team and, eventually, best man at my wedding to Sam. But coming back to the present, I could have handled it better if Samantha had shown a little respect and just said, "It's over, and I'm leaving." I have been rejected in the past, although this has not happened since my college days. It wasn't from a woman who publicly promised to love me forever in front of our loved ones, but I'm sure I could handle it. When Sam made her choice and betrayed our relationship by having an affair with her colleague Ted Harris, and then returned to my house as if nothing had happened, it was like I turned into one of the cartoon characters. On the one hand, my inner voice convinced me that I should be on top and move on gracefully. On the other hand, my father's voice was calling on me to take revenge and bring them both down to earth. Getting the concrete evidence I needed didn't take much time and complicated tactics. After the corporate party on Monday morning, I took time off from work and turned to the services of a divorce lawyer, as well as hired a private investigator. Later that week, when Sam informed me that she would be late at work, I immediately contacted a former police detective who quietly tracked them down to the man's townhouse. Although the photos did not show them engaging in illegal activities, it was obvious that their 2-hour stay was not related to spreadsheet analysis. When everything was ready for Sam's upcoming visit to his residence, the truth was bound to be revealed. On Friday evening, she called me and informed me that she was going to have a drink and dinner with several female colleagues from the office. She assured me that she would not wait, as she had not had a bachelorette party for a long time. About an hour after her call, I drove to the address given by the detective. To my surprise, I found Sam's car parked in the driveway. I knocked confidently on the door, but he met me in a bathrobe and with a familiar grin on his face. I quickly assured him that I had no intention of causing problems. "I have a black belt in karate, so don't even think about it, John," he warned. "I'm not here to start anything, Ted. She's all yours now, and the last thing I need is another deception. Please inform Sam to come to me so that I can hand over these documents." I showed him the manila envelope and called out, "Sam, please come downstairs. There is no need to hide." Sam came down the stairs in a robe that strangely matched the color of this unpleasant man's robe. I had to fight not to grin. "Sam, here are the divorce papers. Go to a lawyer and ask your lawyer to contact mine to negotiate a settlement. Please refrain from returning home tonight or until tomorrow evening. By then, I'll have moved my things out of our apartment and you can come back." Sam carefully picked up the envelope, handling it as if it were emitting dangerous radiation. Tomorrow we were waiting for my parents and my brother's family for brunch. The thought that I won't be able to explain the situation to them worries me. But I reassured Sam by telling her that I had already taken care of it. Right before I arrived here, I sent an email to your brother informing him of the change of plans. I mentioned that you and Ted will be hosting a family reunion in this new place, not in our apartment. I hope he gets the message in time. If not, I promise to inform them of the change of venue when they arrive tomorrow. With that, I said goodbye and looked at Sam. There were tears in her eyes, and it seemed that she was about to break down. But my composure almost disappeared when I noticed that it was adorning her left hand. "Sam, didn't you even have the decency to take off my grandmother's wedding ring while being intimate with this man? Give it to me immediately. The ring you gave me is enclosed in an envelope with divorce papers." Sam's emotions subsided when she managed to remove the ring from her finger. Without saying another word, I left. The doorbell on Saturday at 11 a.m. did not come as a complete surprise to me. Perhaps her brother did not receive my letter in time after all. This meeting is sure to be uncomfortable. When I looked out the window and saw Sam's family gathered on the porch, I had a fleeting thought that the situation might be awkward. But it wasn't until I opened the door that I really realized its magnitude. "John, we're sorry," he said when I saw the email I received and talked to Sam. "Can we go inside and talk?" Brother Sam asked. Over the next hour, Sam's brother, mother, and father did their best to convince me that I should forgive Sam, take her back home, and abandon the idea of divorce. It turned out that after I left, Sam sought refuge in her brother's house, where Ted confessed everything and asked them for help. Sam, knowing about my love for her parents, turned to them for support in solving our problems. Ever since my parents moved to the Sunshine State after my father retired, our conversations have revolved around advice, forgiveness, and pity. For an hour, I tirelessly tried to convince them that this was an unlikely solution. Unfortunately, no one was satisfied, and when they left, not a single smile graced their faces. When my mother-in-law came out on the porch, tears were streaming down her cheeks. I could hardly resist the urge to hug her. I really wanted to assure her that everything would be fine, but in fact it wasn't, and so I refrained from comforting hugs. For the next few months, we led a normal life until the divorce was finalized. Although my ex-wife wanted to talk, I wasn't interested in it. To my surprise, her lawyer offered a consultation, but I rejected the idea as a pointless and expensive exercise. My wife's betrayal has caused irreparable damage to our marriage. As the divorce deadline approached, I received an invitation to have dinner at Ron's. It turned out that Ron, thanks to his wife Jelly's casual conversations with Samantha, knew more about the reasons for our breakup than I did. So I was sitting in Ron's kitchen and watching his wife Jelly, who was cooking for us. Jelly, as we all affectionately called her. Jilly, who was 7 months pregnant, was beaming. Ron noticed my gaze fixed on her tummy and understood my thoughts. "John, let's go outside and talk," he suggested. "I'll join you there. But first I need to have another beer," I replied. Going to the refrigerator, I gently put my hand on Jelly's waist. "He really adores you, Jelly. Promise me that you will never betray him," I begged. Jelly looked at me in disbelief and replied, "Why would I do that, John? I love him deeply, and we are expecting a baby soon. I'm not crazy." Remembering my failed marriage to Samantha just a year earlier, I couldn't help but notice the irony. We were here, just 6 days away from finalizing our divorce. Sam has turned into a stupid woman, John. I don't want to have anything to do with this stupid person, honestly. Ron won't try to convince me otherwise, right? Just go out and listen to what he has to say. I'll tell you the same thing I always tell Sam when she calls. I will support you both in any way I can, except that I will give my opinion on what you should do. I kissed Jelly on the cheek and went outside. I handed Ron one of the beer bottles and waited. "John, Sam wants to meet with you and talk before the divorce is formalized. She called me and asked me to ask you. Not exactly a surprise, is it?" After thinking about it, I realized that she had already asked about this before, and I see no reason to satisfy her remorse. All it will give is peace of mind, which I am not ready to offer. "I suppose I think so too, John. But I want to ask you a question. Do you have any questions that she can answer? If that's the case, then you can shift the responsibility onto her. Before making decisions, get answers to your questions. You can leave, stay, and listen to her, or make any other decision." His words resonated with me. "So, you didn't bring me here to give her another opportunity, did you, Ron?" "No, John. I only care about your interests. If this means continuing the divorce, I fully support your decision." On the eve of the court meeting, I met Sam at a fancy cafe, specifically asking for a private table. "I'm grateful to meet you, John," Sam said, her eyes filling with tears. Suppressing the urge to squeeze her delicate hands in mine, I hurried to distract myself from the conversation. "Before you start sharing your thoughts and feelings, Sam, I'd like to ask you a few questions." When the waiter came over to take our drink orders and start talking about the chef's signature dishes, I took the opportunity to politely intervene. I asked for a bottle of wine and a salad from the chef for two, and also politely asked the waiter to give us as much personal space as possible. Fortunately, he understood my request. With a sense of urgency, I turned to Sam and asked my first question. "Why, Sam? I believed that what we have is really special." She said, "We really had something special, but the reasons for my actions are just cliches." I couldn't help but feel disappointed. After all, we've been exclusively together for the last 7 years. I found myself attracted to an attractive work colleague who regularly showered me with compliments. As a result, my thoughts and time became more and more absorbed in my work. "It wasn't fair, Sam. You knew that I devote long hours to work only in pursuit of promotion, and the ultimate goal is to give you the opportunity to become a stay-at-home mom. I understood that, John, even then, but at that moment I was selfish and wanted to get everything at once. It's hard to believe now how badly I messed up everything. We were only a few months away from starting a family, and I had already even chosen names for our babies." Her eyes were full of tears, but I couldn't reach out and take her by the shoulders. Despite the promise I made to myself, I couldn't resist asking a burning question. "Is he really that much better than me in bed?" Suddenly Sam burst out laughing amid her tears. "No, no, no," she exclaimed. "He can't even match the passion we shared. I've never had to pretend with you." Unbeknownst to Sam, just as she said those words, a waiter came up from behind. He discreetly brought us wine and glanced at my lap, a mischievous smile playing on his lips before he left. Sam's face turned scarlet with embarrassment. As we sat there, general laughter filled the air, breaking the silence that had lasted for 6 months. Our salad plates were empty, and the wine bottle was empty. Sam did his best to apologize and ask for my forgiveness, but I resisted, explaining that although I would think about it someday, the wounds were still fresh and it was too early. As we were about to leave, Sam unleashed a blast wave on me, revealing another reason for my actions. "John," she began, her words heavy with emotion, "you can be as impassive as I sometimes am. Our marriage will come to an end tomorrow, and you remain as motionless as a statue. No tears, no outbursts of anger. Meanwhile, I shed tears every night lying in bed. Did you really love me? Sam, I want you to understand the depth of my love for you, a love that may never be fully comprehended. But before we continue, we need to clarify a few issues. You've mentioned your actions many times tonight, but let's be honest about what really happened. You betrayed my trust, Sam. You entered into an intimate relationship with another man, promising to be faithful to me and neglecting our obligation to leave everyone else. Moreover, it is my prerogative to decide whether I will return home tonight and seek solace in alcohol or allow myself to indulge in tears. This is my personal choice, and it's not worth interfering with it. It is likely that after our divorce is finalized tomorrow, you and your lover will become a couple. He has already demonstrated his disregard for my feelings by having an intimate relationship with my wife, thereby destroying our marriage and reveling in my pain throughout this ordeal. If I shared my difficult nights with you, I know that you would eventually tell him about them, and this arrogant man would undoubtedly find entertainment at my expense. You better not push me, Sam. You don't want to witness the darkness that lurks beneath the surface. As a result, I did not attend the court session the next day. My lawyer took care of it. Our divorce was modern without the guilt of the guilty, with a fair distribution of property. Our marriage was annulled that day. Several months have passed since the divorce. I used all this time to develop a strategy. I managed to get a promotion at work, as well as a significant salary increase. But I have no one and nothing to spend this money on. After an evening of drinking, Ron introduced me to the Reddit site, and I admit I may have gotten too carried away with it. He told me about an intriguing subreddit that was filled with countless stories of devoted husbands seeking revenge on their former partners and their mistresses. Intrigued, I immersed myself in these stories, diligently writing down notes, and even creating a personal ranking system to determine preferred methods of retaliation. Of course, all the ideas that could lead me to prison received a low rating, and those that suggested psychological torment received a much higher rating. Little did I know that my position would soon change radically, thanks to a chance meeting with a certain Ted. After the divorce, Ted and Sam resumed their relationship and recently got engaged. Ted made sure to inform me about this, emphasizing his victory in my defeat. He expressed his unquenchable desire for Sam, implying that my inability to satisfy her must be due to some kind of flaw in me. Still, I doubt if I acted cowardly in deciding to leave. It wasn't the fear of him that held me back, but the fact that I had devoted 2 years of hard work to getting promoted. Getting into a physical altercation would jeopardize this important aspect of my life. This man has already ruined my romantic life. Does he really want to ruin my professional life too? I decided to leave. Some might call me weak, but that's how it was. Surprisingly, a plan of revenge suddenly came to my mind. Interestingly, some men always have relationships with their colleagues. Ted was no exception. Sam wasn't the first woman from our company that he dated. And then I suddenly got a call from Helen Smith, whom I met at one of the corporate events. She suggested we meet for dinner. Ted and Helen's relationship seemed to be moving into a closer stage, or so Helen thought. But Ted suddenly began to treat her as an unwanted illness. It all started when Ted decided to end his relationship with Helen in order to pursue my wife. While Sam and I were going through the difficult divorce process, the relationship between Ted and Helen unexpectedly resumed. But as soon as the divorce was finalized, and Ted and Sam got back together, their relationship took a chilling turn. This turn of events infuriated Helen, because nothing compares to the anger of an abused woman. How could you let Ted take your wife away from you without even protesting? I attended that holiday party last December and witnessed firsthand how Ted behaved. I still had feelings for Ted, and I was hoping that you would fight for your wife, but you didn't take any action. I've already begun to doubt that you don't know what to do, or you don't have the courage. This dinner invitation from Helen seemed to be her way of encouraging me to stand up for myself. Leaning back in my chair and taking a sip of wild turkey, I thought about how I should respond to her challenge. Helen, I'm sorry, but I don't know you well enough to fully trust you. There is little trust right now, but I can assure you that I am not a coward, and someday it will have consequences. Have you ever heard the phrase, "Revenge is a dish that is best served cold"? Helen looked in my direction, catching me off guard. Are you Sicilian? Her question took me by surprise. Yes, that's right, I replied. Her words froze in the air, leaving me intrigued. If you really want revenge, just be patient. One day I will come to you and ask for a favor. It won't be related to anything illegal, but it will be extremely important. When I returned home that evening, thoughts of possible options raced through my head. But then a doubt crept in. Can I really count on Helen to keep our conversation confidential? To allay my fears, I quietly sought advice from a reliable person who confirmed the authenticity of Helen's story. It turned out that Helen and Ted had been in a relationship in the past, and their breakup coincided with Sam and Ted's current open relationship. As we talked, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. I received an apology from my source for not informing me about the first novel, and expressed regret for the lack of warning. They kindly mentioned that the top management of the company is tired of stormy romantic situations involving Ted, and is currently reviewing corporate policy regarding workplace relationships. There were rumors that the position of the body in the company was becoming more and more precarious. During the entire period of the divorce and 2 months after it, I used the services of an escort named Cindy Fox, who called herself by her professional name. Throughout this time, she provided me with both intimate and social support. Once every 2 weeks, I would arrange a dinner or a show for myself, and then a few hours of intimate communication with Cindy before she went home. It was quite expensive, But with the recent promotion, I had nowhere else to spend the increased salary. Although this was the first time I paid for such services directly, I wanted to avoid possible repeat relationships, so Cindy became a reliable option for me when I felt the desire. She also played an important role in my plans, and I informed Helen that if she agreed, she would only need to complete 2 tasks. Below is a schedule for Samantha's upcoming business trip, and a suggested plan for completing the meeting with Ted. The next day, Helen called me to discuss the details. Samantha's business trip is scheduled in 2 weeks and will last 3 days and nights. She will be out of town at this time. In this regard, Helen contacted Ted and arranged a meeting for the first evening of Sam's trip. According to the plan, they should meet in the lounge of the Hyatt Hotel in the city center, where they will drink and chat. But I suspect that the body might have had other intentions. He was hoping for a last meeting with Helen. When I shared the first part of my plan with Cindy, she burst out laughing. I genuinely surprised her when I presented the second part. "Cindy, have any of the women in your profession ever contracted a sexually transmitted infection? I don't mean something life-threatening like AIDS, but rather curable like gonorrhea. It happens, but it's rare. Most women prefer to use contraception, but there are also those I know who engage in unprotected sexual intercourse, but they take precautions and charge twice as much as usual. Some of these women had to be treated for infection. Could you do me a favor, please? Please let me know when one of the ladies is interested. I'll pay her at the standard rate, and you'll get a reward for the search." "Are you kidding? Do you really want to reward him with illness?" "Nothing dangerous, just something to disrupt his wedding night." Everything was ready for the first stage. Cindy shared the details with me later that evening. She was sitting at the bar in the Hyatt lounge enjoying a Cosmo cocktail when Ted appeared and took a seat next to her. As expected, they exchanged smiles, and Ted ordered a scotch. Cindy appeared in an ordinary business suit, radiating a highly professional aura, although, of course, not a professional of any other kind. Just then, Ted's cell phone rang and he quickly answered the call. "Yes, Helen, I understand everything. I wish your mother a speedy recovery," Ted said and abruptly ended the conversation. Turning to Cindy, he greeted her. "Hi, I've just been released because my companion's mom got sick. May I offer you another drink?" Cindy responded with a warm smile. "Of course, I can drink 2 glasses, but don't even think about getting me drunk. I was away for 2 weeks and didn't see my husband the whole time." Desire was born in the girl. Cindy proudly showed off the engagement ring that I bought at a pawn shop especially for this moment. It was akin to provoking a bull in a red cape. Ted couldn't resist the bait. "I'm Ted. Nice to meet you," he introduced himself. They had a casual conversation for 30 minutes and shared several drinks. Cindy, deciding to create the illusion of being fit, drank her 3rd Cosmo. Before she could finish it, Ted had already begun his attempts to seduce her. He gently stroked her arm and leg, conducting a charming conversation in which there were enough intimate hints to ignite her desire. Cindy humorously commented on how much effort he put into his work, and it was hard for her to keep from laughing, especially since she was paid for it. Eventually, she got tired of flirting, quickly finished her Cosmo, and invited him to join her in the room. Ted and Cindy had sex twice during their acquaintance. Ted did not know that the whole meeting was imperceptibly captured in photographs. Later, Cindy asked him to leave, citing the need to rest and recover, but not before she found out his phone number. Afterwards, she and I sat down to look at the pictures on my laptop. I assured her that all photos in which she can be recognized will be deleted before the camera or memory card leaves the room. Despite the removal of a significant part of the pictures, we still have several dozen in which Ted was captured during intimacy with a stranger. The wedding was only a month away, and I did not lose hope that we would come across a successful combination of circumstances. 2 weeks later, Cindy contacted me with the news. One of the girls has contracted gonorrhea and is asking for help from me and another girl to replace her while she's undergoing treatment. Did you by any chance tell her about my previous request? In general, she is ready to talk. But it is important to note that she is self-employed and will most likely require additional payment, believing that it will be difficult for you to find a replacement. Will it affect your bet? Not at all. I guess we already have an agreement, and you always take good care of me. That's true because I always gave her an extra $100 as a tip. So Cindy and I met with this unnamed young lady and discussed the details of the second part. Although it will cost me a considerable amount, it is definitely worth it. Cindy contacted Ted the next day and greeted him warmly. "Hi Ted, this is Cindy from Hyatt. Do you remember me?" Ted replied, "How could I forget? Are you in town?" Cindy confirmed that she was indeed in town and offered Ted an exciting adventure. Ted, slightly taken aback, teased Cindy, "You think too much of yourself. We really had a great time that night. But what exactly are you suggesting that this be the trip of my life?" Cindy explained that she is currently staying at the Hyatt Hotel with a colleague who is characterized by an unbridled character. Intrigued by their conversation, the colleague decided that Ted would be able to spend an unforgettable evening with both of them. She asked if Ted would be able to join them. Ted, feeling confident in himself, believed that two women found him irresistible. "I need to make a short phone call and then I'll be in the living room lobby." "Forget about the lobby. Just meet me in room 155. We will be waiting. Don't forget to bring a chilled steel." When Ted came to the room, our mysterious girl was there, but Cindy was nowhere to be found. Ted asked where she was and got a call from her. It turned out that her son was ill and she had to return home to help her husband take care of him. She noted that this was the first time he was dealing with a sick child. "However, you and I can do without her." So they did. But Cindy never showed up. But our mysterious woman put a lot of effort into helping Ted put the incident involving the Troika in the past. As soon as he left at 10 o'clock, she met with us at a nearby coffee shop to collect the remaining amount that I owed her. I must admit I felt guilty for dragging Ted into this situation, but his obnoxious behavior reached such heights that I almost found satisfaction in my actions. She gracefully took the envelope and left the room. Cindy looked at me, dispassionately remarking, "I told you, she's a ruthless businesswoman." After completing the deal, she stated, "You paid me for the evening. Shall we go to your monastery and do intimate things?" Succumbing to temptation, we surrendered to our desires. But I showed restraint and postponed the completion of my project until the next week after the wedding. Sam and her company received envelopes in the mail, cunningly disguised with fake return addresses. Inside each envelope was a laconic letter accompanied by a collection of photographs. In Sam's envelope, the letter began with the words, "Dear Mrs. Harris, I regret to inform you of an unpleasant discovery. It seems that your husband and my wife had an affair during her visits to your city." The sender further explained that a private detective had been hired to collect evidence, and the attached photos were the result of his investigation. To eliminate any ambiguities, only photographs were attached, which clearly show the husband's face. "I regret to inform you that my doctor recently informed me that I had contracted an infection from a person with whom I had an intimate relationship. It is important that you are aware of this situation and decide to take the test as well. According to my wife, your husband met her at a bar, where he continued to intoxicate her and engage in activities that led to her contracting the same infection. I understand that this may not mean much to you, or that this letter may not even get into your field of vision, but I think it is necessary to bring this issue to your attention, because it calls into question the character and moral qualities of this employee. Thank you for your time and attention." After a chaotic turn of events, the situation quickly found its resolution. Sam's family organized the wedding, while there were rumors about Ted's dismissal and his alleged use of drugs. Fortunately, having a friend in the county health department turned out to be helpful. I focused on rebuilding my life and moving forward, although from time to time I couldn't help but imagine alternative scenarios. In one scenario, I confront Ted and teach him a lesson he won't forget. In another, I'm thinking about making peace with Sam and leaving her in a foreign country without any means of identification or resources. I would have done so, but the thought of how it would affect her mother held me back. I may have treated my ex-wife unkindly, but I couldn't bring myself to do the same to my ex-mother-in-law's daughter. But my interest waned as the new job became more exciting and demanding. That was until the next Simon Sella family meeting, which was attended by Uncle Vin, my father's older brother. Uncle Vin has certain connections, if you get my point. He invited me to come closer and we had a casual conversation. "Johnny, tell me about your divorce. What went wrong?" he asked. "I really liked that girl." I informed Uncle Vin in a shortened version of our breakup. "How did you handle the situation?" After that, I told about my actions taken in retaliation. It was revenge, of course, but not to the extent of completely destroying it. "No, Uncle Win, I tried to move on and take a high moral position." I explained my reasons to him. "This is commendable, and these are good reasons. You know, that baseball coach really did you a favor." Uncle Vin's position on racial issues has remained unchanged. No more, no less prejudice. But it always amused him that this man from Chicago had such a significant influence on my life, comparable to the influence of my own father. If you had inherited your father's short temper, you wouldn't have become the person you are today. There were many times when I had to calm my younger brother down, otherwise he could either be dead or in prison. Have you ever met Coach Price? Just a few times. You should try contacting him. He volunteers at a Boys and Girls Club located on West Palmer. Tell him about the profound influence he has had on you. It's always nice for a man to hear such words from time to time, but now I urge you to come to your father, hug him tightly, and express your love. He deserves to hear those words too. Uncle Vin had a good sense of humor. Despite the fact that many people were afraid of him, he always showed tenderness and affection when he was near me. I visited Coach Price and he convinced me to start volunteering at the club. Interestingly, I also started dating his charming niece, but that's a story for another time. The main thing to remember is that there is no place for drama here, only pure love. When I hugged her, I felt a sense of serenity and affection. She always reciprocated my love and was always there for me. Throughout our marriage, my happiness seemed endless, and I believed that she felt the same way. But my tragic mistake was that I trusted her. Kelly, that was her name, was the catalyst for turning my love into a sharp, blinding hatred, leaving behind an icy, desolate void. Some people say that indifference is the opposite of love, but in my situation it wasn't that far from the truth. Instead, my love turned into a numb, chilling rage, sucking the life out of my very soul. Recovery seems impossible. A part of me will forever remain lifeless. If she was in dire need of help, I wouldn't have given it, even if it meant putting out the flames that engulfed her. You must be wondering what made a once kind and loving person turn into a vengeful creature. It all started at the company's Christmas party last year. Kelly had a tendency to dress provocatively at such gatherings, which didn't bother me much. Her outfit attracted the attention of men, and I felt a sense of pride, knowing that the most desirable woman in the room was mine. I was well aware of the thoughts running through the mind of every man who laid eyes on her. The dress she wore that evening left nothing to be desired. I was once married to a woman who embodied the embodiment of desire. I often wondered who she was trying to captivate with her alluring presence. Although I am not usually prone to jealousy, I firmly believed in the inviolability of what is rightfully mine. As long as there was no doubt about our exclusivity, our relationship flourished. Before we left, I sincerely told Kelly about the likelihood that numerous men would try to take care of her, instructing her to maintain dignity and our mutual respect. I refused to tolerate any form of deception or stupidity. In my circle of martial arts comrades, I am not known as the Smasher for nothing. They are well aware of my ability to be an uncompromising force to be reckoned with. Kelly had never seen this side of me, and I silently prayed that she would never do it. As we were preparing to leave the house, an uneasy feeling arose in me, almost like a premonition. She noticed my puzzled expression and asked, "Why do you look so depressed? Is something bothering you, Jake?" Kelly tried to entice me with her seductive smile, which always provoked a physical reaction in me. But I plucked up the courage and honestly said to her, "To be honest, Boo, I'd rather skip the party this year," hoping that she would understand and agree with my decision. Worried, she asked me, "But dear, why? I thought you always had a great time at these parties." "Stop being such a bore. We rarely go out dancing and I really need to relax and have fun." Let's go, I said impatiently. Then she insisted, "Before we leave, come here and let me deal with that problem I noticed in your pants. I can't have you walking around like this all night." I didn't know yet that this would be our last intimate meeting. "It was amazing," I remarked, feeling a mixture of elation and sadness. "Boo. I have such strong feelings for you, let me take care of you. If we keep this up, we won't make it to the party." "I understand, my love. That's exactly what I was thinking," I said, watching her apply lipstick. But I still looked worried. "Haven't I made you happy, darling? There's still something bothering you?" Something seems wrong. It seems she was too excited about this party. It's just that last year the party got too wild for me to like. There was a lot of inappropriate behavior. People drank too much and behaved stupidly. The crowd usually makes me uneasy. Since Jim took over as vice president of the company, he has been persistently flirting with every woman in the office. There were even suggestions that he had intimate relationships with some of them. I remember how last year I almost gave him a scandal because of his behavior. His constant presence next to you bothered me, and I especially didn't like the way he danced with you. It's worth mentioning that Jim was the president's nephew. This disgusting man seemed to consider himself superior to everyone else. His marital status and the fact that he had 2 children are depressing. His wife undoubtedly deserved a more worthy partner than this disrespectful man. I often witnessed him flirting with several women, which greatly embarrassed her in previous meetings. As a result, she had declined his invitations to accompany him for the past few years. She had elegance and physical attractiveness, so it's hard for me to understand why she stayed with such an arrogant and frivolous person. He may be known for his excessive flirting, but I'm confident in my ability to handle him. Always remember that I am proud to be your partner. My love for you surpasses everything else in life, and you know that perfectly well, don't you? You have no reason to worry. Yes, he may have height, wealth, and good looks, but he will never have the qualities that make you the extraordinary person that you are. You will always remain my beloved, I whispered, although her image of an anxious person haunted me. But I dismissed the thought, because Kelly had never given me any reason to doubt her loyalty. Love can really blind us. It was obvious that my fate was sealed. Her decision was decisive and unchangeable. Sometimes a person has to compromise in order to achieve their ultimate goal. I longed for nothing to interfere with my plan to indulge in a passionate embrace with her upon returning home. We arrived at the party very late, but the atmosphere was already saturated with fun. Melodies filled the hall, luring people to dance, swaying to the beat of them. I forced a smile, joining in the laughter and trying to create the appearance of pleasure. Deep down, I wished the evening would end as soon as possible. Upon entering the room, Jim Stevens approached me with a weak handshake that made me feel uncomfortable. His gaze was full of seduction as he shamelessly kissed Kelly's hand, completely oblivious to my presence. Anger surged through me, making my head throb. I had to restrain myself from attacking him with my fists. It was obvious that this night was going to be excruciatingly long. She winked at me playfully, assuring me of our safety, and we joined the crowd of guests. Jim came over and gallantly clasped hands with Kelly, who did not object. The sight was almost unbearable to me. "Let me introduce you to our new employees," he grinned, as if Kelly belonged to him. Without giving me a chance to answer, he continued, "This is Eddie, my close friend." Kelly gave me a pleading look, silently urging me to stay calm, and I reluctantly let the situation go. I watched the scene unfold, and was quickly stopped by someone who directed me towards a group of men who were engaged in a drinking game and telling stories while their wives chatted about their business. I decided to take part without drinking alcohol, as I prefer to remain vigilant and collected. Against the background of a pleasant group of friends, I periodically looked around the neighborhood in search of Kelly. She was apparently engaged in a friendly dance with several people, and everything looked completely innocent. Unable to accurately assess the passage of time, I eventually felt the urge to leave and return home to hug and enjoy the intimate company of my wife. It has been a long time since we last made love, which seemed like an eternity to us. I was glad that she had the opportunity to relax, as she called it. My duties were fulfilled, and I started looking for her. But she was nowhere to be found, and I was at a loss. I searched every corner, desperately trying to find her. Suddenly I saw her friend Pam and went up to her to ask if she had seen Kelly. Pam looked a little worried and admitted that she had noticed Kelly dancing with Jim about 15 minutes ago. A shiver ran down my spine, and a wave of anxiety swept through my body. A feeling of anxiety overwhelmed me, twisting my stomach into knots. Deciding to find her, I went outside the ballroom, guided by the sounds of voices. Curiosity led me to an abandoned conference room and forced me to continue my investigation. To my amazement, unmistakable sounds of passion, similar to those made by Kelly, reached my ears. I couldn't understand what my eyes were witnessing. My beloved wife was standing there, defenseless, involved in an intimate act with a disgusting man. At first I was paralyzed. My mind couldn't comprehend what was happening. It seemed like I had a stroke. Oblivious to my presence, they remained completely absorbed in their actions, oblivious to my shocked presence. I walked up to them and waited patiently for them to notice my presence. Their reaction was immediate. "Oh my God, Jake, please let me explain everything," she exclaimed, desperately trying to pull herself together. But I couldn't contain my anger and replied with all the bitterness I could muster. "You have nothing to say to me, you lying woman." I admired and adored her, but now I felt betrayed. "It's over between us. You're not my wife anymore," I said firmly. Despite my words, she couldn't meet my gaze. Determined to make her realize the consequences of her actions, I grabbed her by the hair and forced her to look at me. "Tell me, what do you see? You disgust me, you unfaithful creature." "Can you see the look of the man who once loved you? They reflect the lifeless eyes of a departed soul. You completely extinguished my heart and soul tonight. I finally understand why you were so eager to attend this pathetic gathering." Realizing this, she burst into a heart-rending scream. No, don't try to justify yourself. You've been exposed, you lying woman." Overcome with fear, she tried to speak, but no words came out of her mouth. Throughout this confrontation, I continued to rebuke my future ex-wife. Jim stood there, a grin on his face, and 3 of my buddies came into the room, Eddie, Paul, and Dave. It looks like Pam has informed them of the impending disaster. They froze, not knowing what to say. I turned to Jim, my anger boiling. "And you," I growled, "you despicable man! I could end you right now, but instead I'm going to put you under arrest for assault, and my uncle will make sure you get fired. Or maybe I'll just give you a taste of your own medicine and kick your pathetic ass. Your precious wife has already confessed everything to me, you know." He grinned, and all I had time to think was, "To hell with you and your uncle." I let out a low, menacing growl. It wasn't enough for me to humiliate him. I was determined to make him suffer with Kelly. Even though he was a few inches taller, I didn't give a damn about his height. I wanted him to dare to challenge me, not knowing what kind of power I possessed. My anger fueled the desire to hurt, while my eyes were fixed on the woman I once cherished, the woman for whom I was willing to sacrifice my life. We both knew that what she had done was unforgivable. There were no excuses or opportunities for forgiveness. Our life together was irreparably ruined. I firmly stated, looking into his eyes, that she was not worth sacrificing the next 25 years of my life in prison. The consequences of his disrespect were inevitable. He would undoubtedly face the consequences. Contrary to his expectations, I kept my composure and took a strategically advantageous position to prevent his escape. His indecision was obvious, but he decided to pretend to be confident and forcefully push me aside. Unfortunately for him, it was a gross mistake. Swiftly dodging his grip, I delivered a precise punch to his stomach, causing him to double over in pain. Taking advantage of the moment, I grabbed him tightly by the neck and began to slap him quickly with the palm of my hand. The first blow numbed him, his head jerked violently, and he collapsed to the ground. I couldn't keep track of the endless series of slaps I was giving to the helpless, whimpering figure lying in front of me. "Okay, that's enough. Please don't do it anymore. Spare me." His pleas sounded like the pleas of an imbecile coward. But my retribution was far from complete. "You will deeply regret it. As soon as I'm done, you're going to get divorced and publicly humiliated. I'm going to sue you for causing emotional distress by alienating affection. In addition, I plan to sue the company for your inappropriate behavior during working hours. As a result, I am counting on financial compensation while your situation worsens. You greatly underestimated the consequences of your actions." Let it be known that my tone conveyed a feeling of intense anger. At that moment, 2 policemen entered the room. I glanced at Kelly to let her know that I hadn't forgotten about her. "You voluntarily sacrificed a healthy relationship and your marriage for this pathetic man who is crying now. You're both perfect for each other, no matter what a disgusting choice you've made. He started a physical fight. Please detain him. He's obviously not himself." Eddie raised his voice at the police, who quickly figured out the situation. "It was self-defense, officer," Eddie explained, referring to the incident when I caught him with his wife and tried to attack him. The policeman turned to the other 2 men, seeking confirmation. "That's right, officer," Paul confirmed, supporting that I was defending myself. Dave supported him. Jake was just defending himself. Jim, in desperation, pleaded, "They're lying! He attacked me!" It was obvious that Jim was upset and on the verge of hysteria. The police turned their attention to Kelly, who seemed to be in a state of shock. Although her lips were moving, there were no words. Worried, one of the officers asked, "Are you all right?" "Madam, did you witness this incident?" She remained sitting, tears streaming down her face. She covered her eyes with her hands. At that moment, it was difficult for me to feel compassion for her. The affection I once had for her seemed distant, buried deep in my mind. "Do you want to press charges against this man?" the sergeant asked, gesturing at Jim. Despite Jim's visibly swollen face, it was obvious that their sympathies were on my side. "What? He attacked me! He's not himself, I tell you! I didn't do anything wrong!" he protested. "This contradicts what the 3 witnesses saw," another policeman objected. "Put him in jail. I'm more than ready to take legal action. Remove him from this place," the sergeant said sympathetically, looking at me. "If there's anything I can help you with, just let me know. Call the station and ask for Sergeant Connor. You know, I've been in your place too." I nodded, wordlessly confirming his understanding. Eddie said, "We'll talk later, Jake." The rest of the group followed him, leaving me to sort out my business. Eddie came up to me, looking into my very soul. Then he hugged me and said, "Stay strong." After he left the room, there were only 2 people left in it. I surreptitiously took her underwear from the chair, hiding it in my pocket for the future. Kelly regained her composure, but her fear of what was coming was palpable. I shared her anxiety. A chilling feeling seized me, and I felt disconnected from the woman who was dear to me. At that moment, I became a stranger to myself. Watching Kelly, I couldn't help but think about the cliché that she went through all the hardships and stayed disheveled. I was thinking about how to get rid of my love for her, but I couldn't find an answer. My perception of her has changed forever, and holding back my anger has become a crucial factor in keeping my sanity in the midst of grief. At that moment, I realized which way my revenge would go. The pain she had caused me would last until my last breath. My whole world has collapsed. Trust has disappeared. Everything has lost its meaning. Grab your coat and join me at the car. Hurry up, I said, turned my back and left the room. I wanted to hide the suffering I was experiencing from her. Sympathy was not what I wanted from her. The celebration of our love and marriage was on the doorstep. As the car sped through the night, my silence spoke volumes. "Are we going home, Jake?" "What is it?" she asked. "We don't have a home anymore," I replied. "When you broke our marriage vows, you destroyed our home. Now it's just a house, a place where I once found happiness, a place where I loved and trusted my wife, who was once my closest companion," I said, unable to hide the sadness in my voice. Tears began to quietly drip down her face. "Jake, can you find the strength in your heart to forgive me? I'm begging you, please give me a chance. I am so sorry." "Really?" she whispered. "Will I ever be able to erase from my memory the painful images that I saw last night? Will I ever be able to forget those hurtful words that man said about you? When you let this man possess you, it seemed like a betrayal to me. It seemed to me that you had broken our vows and given away what should have been mine. It ruined our marriage. It means that everything we've been through in the last 4 years has been built on lies. It feels like our whole relationship was a fiction." I sincerely apologize, Jake. Believe it or not, my love for you is sincere. I admit that I allowed him to manipulate me by seducing me with forbidden actions. I have never thought about the possible consequences. It was just a silly, childish game. He will never be able to match the incredible person that you are. Now I realize that my actions were thoughtless and selfish. Please give me the opportunity to make amends. I am ready to accept any punishment, any cruel words that you can say to me. Just please don't leave me, because my life will be unbearable without you. It might seem insignificant, but it really meant everything. I screamed in frustration, clutching the steering wheel tightly with my fingers. Emotions were overwhelming me, but I knew I had to regain control. It was like a sick game. Someone was playing with my life. When the car gradually slowed down and stopped, she no longer had the opportunity to respond. "We've arrived. Where are we?" I told her to get out of the car, leaving her confused and with questions. There was a mixture of worry and fear on her face. "Why should I go out?" "What is it?" she asked, desperately searching for answers. "Quickly," I barked, leaving her no choice but to obey. Kelly walked behind me as we approached the door. I asked, trying to contain my disappointment. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "How can I help you?" "Let me introduce myself, Jake Gray. I used to work for your husband's company. Can I talk to you for a minute? I hope Jim is doing well. Could you explain to me the purpose of this conversation?" When we entered the house, I held Kelly's hand tightly. "Please come in and have a seat." She turned out to be the most faithful and devoted wife that I once considered my own. Unfortunately, I was going to hurt her. But the suffering that Jim will experience will be much greater. He should have understood me better. In order to crush him and humiliate my future ex-wife, I had to harm his innocent spouse. These inexplicable primitive emotions drove my actions. "Mrs. Stevens, it won't take long. My wife needs to talk to you," I assured her when all eyes turned to Kelly. I held her hand tightly, urging her to speak. She hesitated. A wave of emotion washed over her. "Come on, tell her," I pressed, squeezing her hand tightly again. Sighing heavily, she finally let the words escape her lips. "My husband caught me with Jim tonight at the Christmas party," she confessed with bitterness and pain in her voice. There was silence in the room. "And tell her about the affair," I demanded, squeezing Kelly's hand tighter and tighter. Tears streamed down her face as she choked out the truth. "We've been secretly dating for the last 4 years." Her voice trembled with regret and sadness. She burst into tears. "I behaved inappropriately and deeply regret my actions." It is important to note that we can only rely on her account of the situation. It's possible that she had several partners or dated Jim more often than she admitted. But it doesn't matter. The fact that she has proven her ability to cheat for a long time has already been established. Jim's wife looked more furious than surprised. She had always known that he was unfaithful. But when faced with the evidence of his infidelity, her knees weakened. Pulling herself together, she walked up to Kelly and slapped her hard in the face. Kelly staggered back and clutched her face, feeling both shocked and hurt. "Get that slut out of my house!" she hissed, and there was venom in her voice. "As soon as I divorce this worthless asshole, he'll be yours, bitch!" She looked at Kelly, her gaze filled with contempt. The thought of Jim's impending return and how he would be received brought her a perverse sense of satisfaction. It was clear that Kelly and she would soon break up, and just the sight of her caused her great pain. She never thought that she would find herself in a position where her beloved wife would need protection, and she could not provide it. Life, after all, can be unpredictable. As they got closer to their sister's house, the reality of their divorce was getting closer. "The house will be sold, and I will receive 70% of the capital. Our investments will be divided equally, and each of us will keep our pension. If you agree to a divorce without objection, I will refrain from using adultery as a basis, which will require the testimony of several people who have been aware of your actions over the past 4 years. I think 3 of my friends will be ready to physically confront you for what happened to your lover. After that, I will send the transcript to all your friends and family members. This will expose your lecherous nature to everyone, and you will remain exposed. The decision is yours. Unfortunately, there is nothing I can do to change it." She looked defeated, helpless, and desperate. "My revenge on both of you will continue, perhaps indefinitely. Throughout our marriage, I didn't pay attention to the fact that you made choices that negatively affected many people's lives. Your actions were dictated by self-centeredness and manipulation and caused significant harm. I won't make that mistake again. The weight of your guilt will haunt you, gradually absorbing you. Eventually, you will come to the realization that I will never come back, which will lead to a deep sense of depression and loss. You will crave my forgiveness, having lost my love because of it. I hope that you will bear the burden of regret for your actions and know that forgiveness will never be granted, even until your last breath." The car stopped in front of her sister's house. "My lawyer will contact you soon. Please refrain from returning to the house until noon tomorrow. I'll be gone by then. I'll come back later when you're not around to pick up the rest of the stuff." So that's it, Jake. Our marriage disappeared in an instant. "By the way, goodbye, please take this with you," I said, handing back her panties. Tears were streaming down her face as she got out of the car. Tears were rolling down my cheeks too. Kelly was against the divorce, and then I fulfilled what I promised. Everyone, both friends and family, found out about her actions. I didn't want to spare her. Revenge was sick and she deserved it.